Hey, yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. While you're at it, if you're sick and tired of dropping $60 to $100 for the latest and greatest wrestling video games, stop immediately. Go to Wrestler Unstoppable, available exclusively through Facebook. Create your wrestler, sign contracts, get involved in storylines, headline pay-per-views, even build your own corporation, all included in Wrestler Unstoppable, available now to all Facebook users, totally free. If you want to become a member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family and you want your name in the shoutouts like our buddies Harold in St. Louis and Mike in Hatfield, then jump on over to patreon.com/Pro Wrestling Podcast. Sign up today and don't forget the Loyalty Rewards program. Any $15 a month contributor will co-host an episode of Going Live with me, and our $7.50 a month contributors will get entered into a drawing to also host an episode of Going Live with myself. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this live episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. We wanted to reach out to you guys. It's been a couple weeks. We've had a lot going on, and there was so much going on in the world of professional wrestling. We want to get to all that tonight. If you are new to the Pro Wrestling Podcast, make sure you check out our homepage, www.prowrestling.com, where all of our topics that come to the Pro Wrestling Podcast can be previewed. And while you're there, if you come across something you got a dire question, you have to ask it, call into the Pro Wrestling Sound Off line at 267-642-1160. Give us your questions, your comments, anything you'd like to get into the show. Make sure you give us your name along with it, and we will give you credit when we talk about it in our shows, and we'll get to as many of them as we can through the week. However, if you are tuning in live, go to the chat function of whatever service you're streaming our show through, and you should be able to get your questions to me right now. It'll pop up on the screen. We'll get your questions going as we sit here. Before we get going with all the news topics, I want to throw this out there. There's this great guy, Joseph Cruzen, who is in Squared Circle Entertainment. It is a group on Facebook, fantastic group, and he came out and he sent out this great message the other day, and I felt like it's important to bring it up because it's something organic, it's fresh, it's new. He talked about the idea of a WWE homecoming show. You know, there's a lot of controversy, a lot of conversation lately about WWE's relationship with Madison Square Garden and how they've had this storied career together. They're always a part of each other. They're a part of the history, going all the way back to the Capital Wrestling Corporation, Toots Mondt and Vince Sr. and all those things. And it would be really great to have something that brings WWE and Madison Square Garden back together again. Joseph Cruzen had the idea of calling it WWE Homecoming. And he had a great idea. He said, at that show, wouldn't it be nice to be able to have a King of the Ring and Queen of the Ring tournament all within the same night, featuring 3 male superstars from both Raw and SmackDown, 3 female superstars from Raw and SmackDown, and then 2 male and female wrestlers from NXT or NXT UK. And that they would end up going back and forth between men's and women's matches, have intermissions where they could do 4-way matches, things of that nature, 4 men's champions on the show, women's champions on the show. Everything brought together to really make this show something special and unique and something you haven't seen before. And when I saw him put that up there, that question out there, he's been trying to get in touch with people at WWE, and of course, the big media conglomerate that they are, they never listen to anybody. And it stinks when you're like a fan like we are. If you're tuning into this podcast, I assume you're a diehard wrestling fan like we are, and you really have a great idea. You want to get it out there, and they just don't listen because Vince always thinks he knows better. And why would you take the advice of diehard wrestling fans? What would they possibly know about what they'd like to see on programming? And it's really a shame. And I read that and I thought, that's actually a great way to reintroduce the King of the Ring tournament, to create a Women of the Ring tournament, all the things that you want WWE to do, give you unique offerings, but it also brings together the two brands in a really unique way. And you can put together every year. It's really hard to get some of the dream matches that you think of throughout the year going because you don't have the wrestlers on the same brand. You don't always want to have these cross-promotional feuds going on, maybe during Survivor Series time, but not the rest of the year. And this would be a great opportunity for that. So when I saw that, I was like, I gotta talk about that on the show because it really is a great way to address that. Not only the lack of creativity in WWE as far in terms of the types of pay-per-views that you see, but also it addresses the Madison Square Garden issue. And hopefully WWE and MSG have a great relationship going forward, but you have probably noticed that more and more companies are trying to branch into the Madison Square Garden arena and run shows there. New Japan is looking at that. Ring of Honor doing that. Looking at people like Impact Wrestling has even talked about it. Progress and ICW were talking about coming over and doing shows there and things of that nature. So at some point, WWE has to kind of embrace the fact that they have to share that location, but that doesn't mean that it can't still be a beautiful and special thing for WWE fans. People who have long-term gone to the Garden and always watched their favorite stars perform there. Just think about some of those dream matches. You could have the Seth Rollins versus the AJ Styles type matches. Now, of course, you want to save that particular match for a WrestleMania. I'm just throwing out some random match, but there is so much you could do with that. And so hopefully WWE gets the message. I would personally like to see a Kurt Angle versus Daniel Bryan match at something like that. Then again, that's another one that could be a WrestleMania moment. So we'd have to see how they would creatively design it, but there would be so much opportunity in doing a show like that, and I really wanted to get that out there. So Joe Cruzen, thank you so much for that idea. I think that was a fantastic thought for WWE to consider. Of course, we have more chance of getting that through. We've got a better chance of seeing God, but we got a dream, don't we? Talking about the news for the week, new matches being discussed for Survivor Series, and none bigger than a one last time match between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, that storied rivalry going all the way back to the very first Hell in a Cell and bringing it forward all the way till now. The issue that took place at the Superstar Showdown down in Australia was great. The match was great. Shawn getting in the ring was actually surprisingly effective for what it was needed to do. I actually think he's holding back a bit, and maybe that's a good thing, waiting until he gets in the ring and actually has to perform in a singles match or even in the tag team match at Crown Jewel, which we'll get to in a moment. But now they're talking about another Shawn Michaels Undertaker match at Survivor Series. And not only that, there's actually conversation that Shawn Michaels may be negotiating for both a Royal Rumble and a WrestleMania appearance. And I'm telling you right now, as a diehard fan, there's only one match I want to see Shawn Michaels participate in if he goes to WrestleMania. And the problem for me is that I really have a tough time with the dream matches that I really want to see at Mania versus the once-in-a-lifetime match Shawn Michaels. And what I'm talking about is, if Shawn Michaels is able to get himself in shape to where he can perform even at a 50 to 75% Shawn Michaels that left 8.5 years ago, I would still love to see Shawn Michaels and AJ Styles lock horns at WrestleMania. However, do I really want to sacrifice an opportunity to see AJ Styles versus Seth Rollins? Or do I want to sacrifice seeing AJ Styles versus any of another ton of talents that he has yet to compete against that he would put on a clinic with in the ring? And so it really puts us in a tough spot, You got to choose. When I put up the article about the perks and pitfalls of a Shawn Michaels return, which I got great reviews from many people, and I got some people who thought it was horrible. And the reason I got that horrible reaction was people insist that Shawn Michaels can't possibly go anymore because he's 50 whatever years old and it's been 8.5 years and everything else. Well, people said that when he left before, and he left for 5 years. And then he came back and had a second life in wrestling. I really, if you see the guy, and he's in the ring every week helping at the Performance Center, they say he gets in there and he moves around quite a bit. I'm not saying he's going to be Shawn Michaels of 1995. I've never said anything to that liking. But what I do think is, because of his ability to do ring psychology, and he is so well versed in the squared circle, I think he could put on a good enough show that it would not disappoint anybody, and you would get that opportunity for one of those mega dream matches. I don't even know who the opponent should be for sure. I threw out AJ Styles because of how excited people got when that fake poster came out last year. I mean, it got the buzz from everybody hoping that match would happen. And then when it didn't, people were kind of let down. But at the end of the day, it almost doesn't matter who you would put him with. People would come to the arena to see that match just because it's him. I actually think him being in Triple H's corner at Superstar Showdown, that was a bigger draw than the match itself, because I think people have kind of been Undertaker, Triple H to death, And so, curious to see what happens. I hope he does sign a 2 or 3 or 4 match deal just so we can see him a little bit more. Obviously, he already is breaking the promise of not coming out of retirement, so that's gone. So once that's gone, all for the money of Saudi Arabia. Again, we'll get to them in a moment. But Whatever the reason is, and actually X-Pac was on his podcast saying the same thing, that he's coming out for a great reason, money. And, let's face it, people, I understand Shawn Michaels has a reputation for being the religious guy, the born-again Christian and all that, but at the end of the day, he does still have to provide for his family. He is an employee of WWE. He works at the Performance Center, but if he can still go, and they want to pay him, pay him. The Saudi Arabian crowd wants to see these 90s nostalgia acts, but who are we kidding? There's not a true wrestling fan who can't make the case that Shawn Michaels is in the top 10 wrestlers of all time. And anytime you get a chance to see a top 10 wrestler make that return, you're going to pop. Hulk Hogan can barely move. And if he came out tomorrow and said he wanted to challenge Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship, and the minute he walked out to Real American, everybody would get on their feet and scream and cheer. I don't care how much you can't stand the guy at other times. So it'll be curious to see how that plays out. I've been saying about the Saudi Arabian thing, I said we would get to that in a moment, and let's get to that now. The controversy surrounding the fact that we have a Washington Post reporter who has gone missing in Saudi Arabia. The Turkish government claims that there's been an assassination of him, and they have evidence and proof, but we haven't seen it yet. And so this creates an issue with WWE running a show in a country that in theory, and I'm saying in theory because we have to have proof, but even if it's a possibility that this man has been harmed by people in Saudi Arabia, that's a problem for WWE to be doing business there. I actually saw Gail Kim put on Twitter a great comment. She's like, WWE, do the right thing. You got enough money. And she's right, And I hate to say that because I'm actually looking forward to the show, but you could still put the show on without having to do it in Saudi Arabia. You really could. I understand it's last minute and all that stuff. Go to India. India is one of the biggest markets for WWE. Do it in Dubai or something like that. Find an arena in another alternative market that you have a huge opportunity in. And I keep saying the India thing because, let's face it, that really is the biggest market WWE could go to. And move it there. Make a deal with the Saudis that you can come back if these things clear themselves up. But in the meantime, it really does feel like it's a bad time for WWE to be going to Saudi Arabia for a wrestling show when people's lives are being taken, even if it wasn't involved. I mean, innocent till proven guilty is the way I always hang on things. So I'm not saying they did anything, but they're also not denying much. They're just not really saying anything. So keep your eyes on CNN or something to follow that story. I don't want to go too deep into politics here on the Fro Wrestling Podcast, but it is definitely a situation WWE has expressed that they are monitoring, and it looks like they're going to move forward with that show, which is interesting because Kane will be on the show and he's a politician, and that could bring some backlash. U.S. senators are actually advising WWE to withdraw from the show because they think it's too much. Fascinating that WWE is getting mainstream press for running a show someplace with such a huge political topic going on. Talking about dream matches earlier, I saw on Twitter another cool thing that Seth Rollins was asked at one of those cons. I forget which one. There's 9 million Comic-Con and WrestleCon and all these things. He's at one of those cons, and he was posed the question about if he would like to wrestle Kenny Omega, and he was like, absolutely, because I'm the best in the world and I want to prove it. And Kenny Omega responded, that it would, again, he's also in favor of the match. And I don't know any wrestling fans who wouldn't want to see it. If you've really sat down and watched some New Japan Pro Wrestling and seen what Kenny Omega can do in the ring with people like Kazuchika Okada, Hiroshi Tanahashi, those types of talents, and then you look at Seth Rollins, who can work with anybody. The guy can have a 5-star match with a broom. Putting those two together, that is absolutely the chemistry that you're dying to have in any feud, and I think those two would really tear the house down. And it's something I hope we get to see. As we all know, Kenny Omega's contract's coming due at the end of the year, beginning of the new year. He'll probably go to Wrestle Kingdom, and here's my prediction. If Kenny Omega walks out of Wrestle Kingdom as the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion still, then he is going to stay with New Japan. If he walks out losing that championship to Hiroshi Tanahashi, who's like the star of New Japan Pro Wrestling, then I think he's on his way out. That's just my gut telling me that. In addition, this week it was big news that in New Japan Pro Wrestling, the new ownership and new management of the company, okay, they had a change of leadership last year, and apparently the wrestlers in the company are furious with the way the company is handled, that they're treated almost like cattle. I think that's what I read an article on eWrestling News that said they feel like they're treated like cattle instead of as professional talents. And that's horrible considering they're probably the best talent pool in the entire business. So it's kind of a shame that they would make their talent feel that way. And now the theory is, the Wrestling Observer pointed out that there's a chance that a lot of these talents who in the past had been reluctant to come to WWE may change their mind about that with this new leadership team because they don't like that style. So I'd be curious to see if WWE can swoop in there and scoop up some of those premium talents. Some of the talents that won't be appearing on Raw or SmackDown anytime soon, but will be making appearances for WWE are Zack Ryder and Mike Kanellis, who all have a new home. Zack Ryder and Mike Kanellis both being moved over to 205 Live. I love the idea. Give them a fresh start. Give them a brand that is designed for people that you're not going to push to a main event status on Raw or SmackDown. The reality is NXT could groom people for either the main roster, Raw and SmackDown, or for 205 Live. And I think if you put someone like a Zack Ryder, a Mike Kanellis, a few other talents that you're not doing anything with, like Tyler Breeze, people like that, put them on 205 Live. They're smaller guys. You could put the Cruiserweight Championship on any number of them, but you can let them actually perform for a change. Tyler Breeze is doing nothing since his partner got hurt. Fandango's not going to be back for another 6 months or so. Put him on 205 Live. Give him a run. I mean, heck, when he was in NXT, he was NXT champion. And believable as NXT champion. Put him on 205 Live along with Zack Ryder and Mike Kanellis so they can have a much more serviceable and, in WWE's eyes, I hope, much more cost-effective relationship. Think about it. You got people like Mike Kanellis who aren't going on television. They're not on the pay-per-views, not typically, but you're paying them a good chunk of change. You want to get a return on your investment. Well, I'll tell you what, it would not take much to make Zack Ryder one of your top merchandise sellers if you have him on 205 Live and actually focus on that product. He has a following anyways from the internet, so help him. Give him something to sink his teeth into that's worthwhile. Him and Buddy Murphy going at it for the Cruiserweight Championship. Whatever. I don't care how they book it. But come up with something effective for the guy to do. I think Zack Ryder's one guy who's been overlooked way too long. Goldberg in the news again, talking about how he's open to a WWE return once again. This is kind of becoming a broken record. The guy has said it several times. WWE doesn't seem to be motivated to make it happen. But if they ever were, it better be sooner than later. I would still love to see a Goldberg-Undertaker match. It doesn't have to be at WrestleMania, but I would like to see the match. I'd still like to see Goldberg and Roman Reigns, the two guys who do the spear. I wouldn't mind seeing a Goldberg-Batista match, except for they did one 5-minute match back on Raw in 2001 or something like that, 2002. 2003, somewhere in that time frame, whatever the year it was that Goldberg came to WWE the first time. You know, they did that garbage when Batista was just getting into Evolution and everything, but they've never really had a great match. So I'd watch that. But I just do something with the guy before it's too late. His son is in favor of him doing it. Apparently his son loved the fact that his dad returned to wrestling for a while. And you don't have to put the Universal title on the guy again, or any title for that matter. He's an attraction. If you could bring Brock Lesnar in 4 times a year to wrestle, you could bring Brock Lesnar or a Goldberg in once or twice a year just to pop the crowd. Just to have one big match a year. I mean, heck, he did it with The Undertaker for like the last 8 years. Do it with Goldberg. Trish Stratus's Evolution appearance is considered to be not just a one-off appearance. The word now is that she has signed a 3-appearance deal where it'll see her at Evolution, at the Royal Rumble, and at WrestleMania. That is the rumor. Now, I haven't had a confirmation of that, but that is what is floating around on multiple sites. And here, let me do my 30 seconds. eWrestling News, WrestleZone.com, WrestlingInc.com, F4WOnline.com, like all the sites, they all put out the same stories, and I report on the same stories, so I'm going to make sure everybody knows I'm giving credit. Yes, I read my stuff just like everybody else does, and I also have my own places I go, so there's my little blurb, so nobody's going to yell at me for stealing their content. Next topic of conversation, WWE is trying to get someone major for SmackDown 1000 this week. They teased it earlier this week, and it hasn't been confirmed, but they are trying to bring in The Rock. Now, I don't know how much you have to pay The Rock for a one-off for SmackDown. As much money as that guy has, you should do it for free. Then again, as much money as WWE has, they can afford to pay somebody. But they're trying to bring The Rock in, especially since, you know, the name SmackDown came from one of his catchphrases. But what's shocking to me is they're trying to bring him in, and it looks like Edge may be headed out. He was originally supposed to have an episode of the highlight reel type thing on the show, a talk show segment. But now it looks like they are not advertising that segment at all. And instead of doing the cutting edge, they're going to do something else. And it looks like Edge may not be booked for the show now, which would become as kind of a shock to me. But then again, when I look at it, Edge is now signed to do House of Hardcore in December. He'll be appearing for Tommy Dreamer when they go to the old ECW arena in Swenson and Rittner Street in Philadelphia. Maybe that upset WWE officials. I don't know. Which, by the way, at that same show, David Arquette will make his first appearance for House of Hardcore. I'm kind of shocked Tommy Dreamer would book David Arquette with the fact that he has such a tumultuous history in wrestling, being WCW champion when he shouldn't have been and things of that nature, but he'll be wrestling for House of Hardcore. Be curious to see how that turns out. There was some conversation this week about NXT and whether or not they do an expansion in the near future. So NXT looks great in the United States, but they're talking about potentially putting NXT expansions. You know, they do the NXT UK, talking about South America, India, China, Australia, various locations around the globe so that you can grow talent, grow them the WWE way. Somebody said something about South Africa, which would be another prime location to put somebody. And there was even one talking about, you know, they have UK, but something further west in Western Europe. And trying to really focus on developing new talent that would eventually be progressed to the main roster. And why not? WWE is richer than anybody needs to be. Put that money where your mouth is and start bringing up some more talent. Now, the only problem I have is, man, they don't pay these guys in some of these NXT shows enough money. That UK division, they're getting paid like $40,000 a year. That's like pennies compared to what a lot of the wrestlers are making. You know, even the B brand guys, you know, the Mike Kanellises of the world are making more money than the whole UK brand is. And that's a shame when you got people like Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate, you know, Trent Seven wrestling for you, Wolfgang, who are quality wrestlers who deserve more as well. Now, I'm not saying those four guys specifically are making $40,000, but it was public knowledge that they were getting very significantly lowballed on their initial offers for the WWE NXT UK brand. So hopefully, if they do an NXT expansion, they will hopefully use that as a way to get some more cash to these people, make it worth their while to stay out of the indies. And I'm not trash talking indie wrestling, but WWE is the biggest exposure in the world. And if you want to showcase your talent on the biggest stage, that's where you go. And a lot of the guys won't do it. You know, there was a conversation about Walter, independent wrestler Walter, and why he won't go to WWE has to do with their travel schedule and not wanting to come to the United States and things of that nature. But if you had him in the WWE NXT UK brand, where he has a lot of respect for the UK NXT brand, well, you might be able to get somebody like Walter to sign an exclusive deal, but you got to pony up the cash. These guys are making good money on the indies nowadays. You can't give them low-ball offers and expect the best of the best to go to you. You got to start paying the people for what they're worth. The conversation has come up again about when Hulk Hogan is going to make his televised return to WWE. It looks like it could be at Crown Jewel. I don't know what the extent of his return would be. There's some conversation about an NWO appearance. I don't know why you would bring the NWO to Crown Jewel unless there was some significant reason to be there. Maybe they show up at Crown Jewel to interfere in the match with DX. I don't know. I think that would be stupid. Unless you're going to turn the Brothers of Destruction babyface again and have them fight off the NWO, but I can't see Hulk Hogan taking bumps, or Scott Hall for that matter. But who knows? But it sounds like it's getting closer than ever for Hulk Hogan to make his televised return, and I think it's been quite a long time. And look, there's people on both sides of the issue. I'm not going to dump on or parade around anybody's philosophical differences about Hulk Hogan. The reality is, I'm reporting what it is. It's going to happen. It's a matter of time, and it sounds like Crown Jewel might be the place that it happens. Cody was on Twitter. Somebody asked him questions about the Bullet Club Elite going to WWE, and his response was that it's pretty possible. It's pretty possible at the end of the year that Nick and Matt Jackson, Cody, Kenny Omega, and potentially Hangman Page go to WWE. That's scary to hear him say that. And then he gave another tweet later that was talking about how, you know, he has his options, and he might just have to double down, implying that he would do All In 2 instead. But I know he loves what he did for All In, and I hope he continues that. But Rey Mysterio just came back to WWE, and that's the big thing. He'll be on SmackDown 1000, taking on Shinsuke Nakamura in a WWE World Cup qualifying match, which I think is the coolest concept for the whole Crown Jewel event. But if Rey Mysterio can come back and get into such a great position and things of that nature, there is no reason that Cody Rhodes, and the reason I go with Rey Mysterio is a stockholder in Aero Lucha, as am I, Pro Wrestling Podcast, co-owners of Aero Lucha. But Rey Mysterio is a focal point of Aero Lucha. he has already recorded content for Aerolucha. So you would think that there must be something in his contract that allows him to continue to perform for Aerolucha. If not, he at least is allowed to have ownership in the company, because you can't take that away from the guy. It's a stockholder type thing. So obviously he's got a vested interest in the success of Aerolucha. So if you're somebody like Cody, that's what you negotiate. Listen, WWE, I want to come back. I want to bring the boys. I want to bring the Bullet Club. But I need to be able to have the flexibility to do All In too. Now, maybe we co-brand and use some WWE talent. Maybe we don't. Maybe you understand that this is a side project. Jerry Lawler still wrestles for God knows how many independent companies, even though he's in his 60s, and he's still an on-air talent for WWE, so who knows? Maybe that's what they do. Maybe not. Maybe they won't negotiate that. Maybe they don't like the fact that he has All In, and them signing him to a lucrative deal will be a way of, silencing the All In conversation. But at least we know that he's contemplating all of his decision-making processes and all his influences on his next contract signing. They announced that there will be a new world WWN champion crowned. Joey Janela, who recently won the championship. That's, a prestigious championship in the whole WWN, Evolve, Rev Pro, all those companies. It's a prestigious championship, and it's a monumental achievement for Joey Janela. But unfortunately, in a match, he ended up destroying his knee. ACL, MCL, PCL, all that kind of stuff. He'll be out for a significant amount of time, so they're going to have to crown a new champion. So if you tune into their programs on Fight Network or on their streaming service, keep your eyes on the WWN and see who they're going to push as their new champion. They spent so much time with Matt Riddle as their man, and then they were going to transition to Joey Janela, and now he's out. It's kind of a huge blow for them to have. I would not be surprised if someone like Walter steps up and becomes the new WWN champion. Neville made his in-ring return. I know it was about a week and a half ago. It's been a while, like I said at the onset of the show, since we've been on the air, but he returned to Dragon Gate in Japan. Fascinating that he would choose to go somewhere he was at in the youth of his career, and he's making his return to Dragon Gate, which is a beautiful thing, where at least he's in a ring. He's gone back to being Pac. He's renamed the Red Arrow the Black Arrow, which is funny because he joined a heel faction there named Red. You would think he'd keep the name, but maybe WWE owns the name. I don't know. But at least he's back in the ring. I was a little surprised he didn't go to New Japan because of their expansion into the United States and the power of their programming right now. But at least he's back in the ring. Hopefully we get to see him more prominently featured in a televised program here in the United States. The Bullet Club, we were talking earlier about the people going to WWE. One of them already received an offer, and that's Hangman Page. Adam Page has decided that he's not interested right now. Not that he flat out turned him down, but said that the Bullet Club wants to stick together, and at this particular time, he needs to decline. Does not mean that he's shutting the door and going there. It just means he's waiting for everybody else's contracts to come due, and then they will it sounds like almost like they're negotiating almost as a mini union. They're all going to probably end up in the same place, wherever that is, which could be good, could be horrible. For those who tune into the Fro Wrestling Podcast website, when you go to Fro Wrestling, click on Infro's Corner. I have an article there all about whether or not the Bullet Club should go to WWE and whether or not it'll work. Check that article out. I think it's a pretty solid article. Got some of the biggest traffic to the site in weeks. So check that out if you get a chance. But Hangman Page, as of right now, not willing to make the jump to WWE as of yet. Ring of Honor, they're having a tough time right now because stars keep leaving and going to WWE. Punishment Martinez is the latest one. He finished up, dropped the World Television Championship to Jeff Cobb, who I'm thrilled to see Jeff Cobb in Ring of Honor. I actually kind of want to see him in WWE too. Him and Brian Cage would be amazing in WWE, but both are locked up contracts now. But you have someone like Punishment Martinez. He is perfect mold for WWE style wrestling. Big, strong, tatted up. He almost looks like The Undertaker when he was younger. I mean, obviously we can never have another one of those, but he's perfect for the role. And it'll be curious to see what WWE does with him. I'm sure he'll go to NXT to start. He'll be the next. He's kind of be Baron Corbin all over again, which is weird to me that they would do that, but that's kind of what you get to feel, that they're going to do something like a Baron Corbin kind of character. Davey Richards, another person, he put out on Twitter that he's returning to pro wrestling in 2019. Any company that he was unable to fulfill a commitment with in the past, he's willing to fulfill those dates in 2019, which is always great to see him come back. One of the best wrestlers in the world. So hopefully you get to see some more quality wrestling with him. Last couple topics for the week. One, I got a question from a listener, and they, again, please, when you give me a question, give me your name so I can give you credit for it. But they asked, is Goldust a Hall of Famer? Now, for me, I immediately say yes, hands down, no questions, absolutely. And I always defend that with the Coco Beware argument. If Coco Beware is in the Hall of Fame, then Goldust should be too. If Hillbilly Jim is in the Hall of Fame, Goldust should be too. But I'll go beyond that. Goldust, he's been an Intercontinental Champion. He's been a Tag Team Champion. He was a WCW United States Champion and WCW Tag Team Champion. He's a stalwart of professional wrestling since around 1991, when that's where he really started to debut, and he instantly got traction being Dusty's kid. Left WWE. He debuted in WWE. Actually, he spent a little bit of time in World Class, which right at the tail end of World Class. Went to WWE with his dad. Got a little bit of exposure. Got in a ring with Ted DiBiase right away. Left WWE. Went over to WCW, where he experienced a lot of success. Great feud with Ravishing Rick Rude over the U.S. Championship. Teamed with Ricky Steamboat. Things of that nature. Really did a nice job. Then was hired back by WWE and became the Goldust character. And the androgynous, strange, warped character he was at the time was so far ahead of its time. So revolutionary. Had that incredible backlot brawl with Roddy Piper. And he's done so much. Then he leaves WWE, goes back to WCW, doesn't really work out there. When WCW folds, he goes down to TNA for a little while as himself, and then later he changed the character to a Goldust type character. Left there, came back to WWE, and teamed with Cody and made a great tag team that had a great run with the Tag Team Championship. And even to this day, when he's in the ring, he still can move. And I just, you have to appreciate a guy who at his age can still go the way he can go. He still gets around that ring as good as almost anybody out there. So it's not about the Coco Beware argument or the Hillbilly Jim argument or anything of that nature. It's on Goldust on his own merits warrants an opportunity to be in the Hall of Fame. If I'm going to complain, I'm going to put out there that, we've got other people in the Hall of Fame that absolutely don't belong there either, the Godfather, etc. So if you're going to put people in who really don't have a resume that is a Hall of Fame level resume, here's a guy who's done everything he's ever been asked to do. He's portrayed one of the most strange and unique characters in the history of the business. Absolutely, my opinion. So to whoever wrote me that question, absolutely first ballot Hall of Famer to me. And I say first ballot. In WWE, there's no ballot. It's whoever Vince wants to put in. But whatever. I would put him in this year. I really would. One of the other questions somebody asked me was about 205 Live. They said it's dying a slow death. Up until this week, I completely agree with you. Like, if you told me, like, Cedric Alexander had, like, some long reign with the Cruiserweight title, I would have said, who cares? I don't remember the last time I tuned in to 205 Live. It was probably before January. It was back when Enzo was still champion. So it's been quite a long time. It's been at least since January, maybe December. And since then, it's really the same matches cycled through over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And how many times do you want to see Mustafa Ali and Tony Nese? I like how Cedric Alexander doesn't lose a match for like 9 months, and then all of a sudden he loses the title, and Tony Nese beats him on the very first episode after he loses the belt. He was unstoppable as champion, but now all of a sudden you lose one match and you go on a losing streak? That doesn't make sense to me. Never has. But with this new influx of people, Mike Kanellis, Zack Ryder, and potentially others who are not creatively being thought of, I think you have an opportunity to turn that tide, and maybe it won't die that slow death. Maybe it can actually bring some viewers to the show. Now, I think what would help them is to put the show on before SmackDown's tapings. Record the episode before SmackDown goes live. Give people a reason to show up early. And that way, look, dude, by the time you've done SmackDown, it's 10 o'clock at night. You don't want to sit around for another hour to watch these little guys fly around the ring. But if you came out to the show an hour early, you'd stay till the end of the show to still see AJ Styles. You're not hanging around to see Mustafa Ali and Tony Nese. You're just not. So it would behoove WWE to think about that, and that might change the tide of things. And then the other comment of the week, somebody was saying that the Mixed Match Challenge is garbage because they keep having to make all these changes. Look, you got to understand something. There are challenges for the Mixed Match Challenge, and they are that people are going to get injured in the world of professional wrestling all the time. It's just a natural thing that happens in the business. And with that being said, when you've got this many people high flying the high spots constantly and all this stuff, people are going to get hurt. And that's what's been happening lately. Talents have been going in the ring, giving it their all, somebody gets hurt, and then the whole show has to be changed around. Sasha Banks got hurt. Alexa Bliss got hurt. Kevin Owens is now hurt. Kevin Owens is going to be out having surgery on his knee, and he's going to be out an extended period of time. Sasha Banks is nearing a return, but she's already been replaced in the Mixed Match Challenge. So she'll be ready for Evolution, but not for the Mixed Match Challenge. So there are unique challenges in presenting it, but I don't think it's something they should go away from. Now, I heard other people saying, oh, it doesn't get enough views. It's only getting 500,000 views or whatever. That's 500,000 views they weren't getting before. It's eyes on the product. It's eyes on another segment, another audience, the Facebook group. You know, go for it. It's not like you're paying anything extra. They're taping these things after SmackDown episodes. The talent's already there. And it's not like you're going to suddenly pay them a significant portion increase of their pay. It only took place twice this year. So give them a few matches and put something unique out there and get a few more viewers. Maybe you draw in a new audience. That's just the way I would handle it. That's all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us next episode. We'll run down the latest wrestling news and rumors. As always, special thanks go out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing all the music and sound effects that we use in our shows. Today's podcast is sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this new game from Beazle Games by going to frowrestling.com and clicking the icon in the middle of the page. And to alleyrepair.com. Contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade game needs. If you're looking for your next career move, you're considering college, university life, or you just need some formal training for your next career decision, go to our website at frolifeplanning.com for all your higher education needs, as Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you so much for tuning in with us tonight. Thank you for being patient with us. It's been a couple weeks. If you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, make sure you go to www.tsj101sports.com for their latest articles on the world of professional wrestling. Or go to my blog at In Fro's Corner, found on our homepage, frowrestling.com, and check out my editorial pieces there as well. We always love to hear from you. Call the Sound Off line, 267-642-1160. Give us some questions and comments. Enable notifications on YouTube, and stay in touch with the Fro Wrestling Podcast. Check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/Fro Wrestling Podcast. Become a Patreon member today, like Harold in St. Louis and Mike in Hatfield, and we can't wait to have you a part of the family. Until next time, take care, everybody. Have a great night.